Beloveds, welcome to Tafadzwa Mazibuko's book launch. As a family, we're very excited that Tafadzwa has written another book called The Legacy of My Father. And the purpose of today's session is really to launch that book. We're going to do three things in this particular book launch session. The first thing that we're going to do is to hear from Tafadzwa herself. So I will take the time to ask Tafadzwa some questions around why did she write another book? What message is she trying to communicate to all of us? What is the process that she has gone to write this book? I believe this session is going to be helpful to all of us, helpful in a number of ways. Number one, I think there is a clear message to fathers, particularly in terms of how fathers can be very impactful and significant in their children's lives. So I think there is a particular message to fathers. I also think that there is a message to all of us in terms of how we can take some time and honor our parents. In my view, this book is an attempt by a daughter to honor her father, to celebrate the impact that her father has had on her own life. And it's something that we can learn from what Tafadzwa has done. I think this book is also very, very important to other writers. I cannot tell you how many people I have seen in my life who would want to write a book, but for one reason or another, they just can't get started on that process of writing the book. So we're going to hear from Tafadzwa what message she has, particularly for people that would want to write books, aspiring authors, what message she has for them, as well. I think there is a particular message in this book for all of us, and those are some of the things that we're going to hear today. So there are three things that we're going to do. We're going to hear from Tafadzwa, and then I'm going to give an opportunity to a very renowned motivational speaker and executive coach who's popularly known as Coach Taffy. And so I'll give an opportunity to Coach Taffy to say a few words today. After that, I'm going to give an opportunity to all of us to ask Tafadzwa some questions here and there, and then we will conclude the session by 5 o'clock. But let me just start by saying one or two things about Tafadzwa. Who is Tafadzwa? And I will read Tafadzwa's introduction from her own book. I've got a copy of the book with me now. So Tafadzwa introduces herself as an award-winning author, a social entrepreneur. I can attest to that. I think Tafadzwa should write there a multi-award, winning. She's the founder of Tafadzwa Mazibuko and Associates, and she contributes her wisdom to some international publications. There are quite a number of publications that she has been featured in. She has also been featured in a number of magazines, in radio and television, programs. As somebody who has traveled a long journey with Tafadzwa as a husband, I think Tafadzwa should have added there that she is an international speaker. She has recently returned from a conference in Paris where she was asked to present on a number of topics. And I know that next year she will be going to another conference in America. So she is indeed establishing herself as an international author and somebody who is prepared and who is ready to contribute her wisdom to the world. This is not the first book that Tafadzwa has written. In the particular book that we are featuring today, there is mention of other books that Tafadzwa has written. So for some of you who have followed Tafadzwa's journey, you would know that her first book, it was a book called The Dream That Was worth waiting for, which is really the title of your Facebook page as well. As a husband, I think this book has really touched my life. I always stand amazed by how Tafadzwa has been victorious over a number of hurdles that she has that she has encountered in her life. If I were to read for you some of the things that people have said about that particular book, one of the things that they have said here is that Tafadzwa's honest, transparent, and vivid revelation of a dream and a persistent fight to achieve every aspect thereof will encourage and motivate the most feeble among us. A powerful testimony demonstrates practically the principle that Dr. Ed Cole taught. Winners are not those who never fail, they are those who never quit. And that's what this book is all about. She then went on to write a second book, The King's Dream for His Daughter. And if I were to write what Pastor Anna, who's the president of Women in Prayer, said about that book, she said, this book gives a deeper and fuller understanding that the King has a dream for each of us. It is honest and inspirational about the real challenges that women are encountering. It is clear that God will use this book to help women discover his purpose for them, get healing from all kinds of abuse, rejection, and limiting belief of not being good enough. It will teach women how to trust God, find peace and hope, and live the King's dream in the midst of struggles. Tafadzwa then went on to write a third book, and a third book is called The Dream, 12 P's to Realizing an Audacious Dream That Impacts Generation. And if I were to read, something that Michael Gondo said about that book, he said, this book serves as an encouragement to those wishing to pursue their dreams. The 12 P's will provide a guideline to those wishing to dream for the benefit of self and generations to come. The progressive view of the 12 P's will provide the reader with a toolkit and framework within which to progress their dreams from a spiritual concept to practical reality. In addition to those books, Tafadzwa, on an annual basis, publishes the Dreamers Daily Planner, and the 2022 planner is available. Later on, I will tell you where you can get all of Tafadzwa's material. But today, we're talking about this book, The Legacy of My Father, which would be Tafadzwa's fourth book, in addition to the Dreamer's Planner, and in pursuit of the King's Dream Prayer Journal. So Tafadzwa also publishes a prayer journal. If I were to just tell you a few things about that prayer journal, In Pursuit of the King's Dream Prayer Journal is a byproduct of the book, The King's Dream for His Daughter. The prayer journal is a powerful tool to measure your spiritual growth in prayer, celebrate answered prayers as you persist in prayer for unanswered prayers. A praying woman is a powerful woman. That's something that Tafadzwa emphatically says in her books there. What I would want to do now, Tafadzwa has just joined me where I am. What I would want to do now is just to give Tafadzwa an opportunity to respond, particularly to 3 questions. So let's just make sure that we can fit Tafadzwa in the screen. I'm sure you can see Tafadzwa there. The first thing that I would want to say to Tafadzwa is, what prompted you to write this particular book? I'm sure you had a particular vision, you had a particular prompting inside of you that prompted you to write your 4th book. Would you tell the viewers, what is it that led you to write your 4th book, The Legacy of My Father?
Thank you very much for the opportunity. My father loved telling his stories. If anything, if you would sit down with him, he'll take you back to when he started teaching, and how he loved teaching. And my father has been a teacher and a headmaster all his life. And whenever he spoke about it, he exuded this passion in being an educator, and in wanting to let the world just learn from some of his encounters within. That's where the inspiration came to write the book, but and also just to honor him. And my mother just sent me a message that Daddy is so proud of you when he heard that there's a book. He hasn't seen the book. He actually didn't know that I was writing a book. So I think that's a payoff on its own, that it has made him a proud father. So yeah.
Before I ask you the second question, Tafadzwa, for some of you who are following this conversation, let me just read a few things about this book. Obviously, there is a statement there which says the book is dedicated to those who have made an impact in their world. So there is quite a lot of mention about impact, about significance, in this particular, book. Tafadzwa, the first few chapters, when I read the first few chapters, obviously you talk about significance. You then talk about, in pursuit of significance. In what way has your father impacted you significantly in your life? Can you just share with our listeners and our viewers the specific areas that your father has impacted you in a significant way?
My father has impacted me as a father, as an educator, and as a prayerful man. By the way, in this December, my parents will be married for 54 years. And I've always been very inspired. One thing that I must confess, all the time that I stayed with my father, I've learned he values marriage, he values family. Unless if I miss it, I haven't heard my father shouting at my mother. Not that they are perfect, but I never really heard him shout or raise a hand or scream. That's how much he valued peace in the marriage. And to me, it's a challenge for me, because I'm not yet even close to 50. So inspiring to seeing a couple that is gone through all the challenges that life brings and overcame, and still together at 54. To me, it's a huge inspiration. And my father, being an educator, has instilled values to love reading. My father at 80, you still find him reading something. He's just reading something. And to me, it's quite an inspiration. My father valued education so much that at least in all his children, we all have a first degree. And he would sacrifice for people to get a good education. And he would have loved at least one of his children, or probably all of them, to be teachers, because that's how he loved teaching. But to me, we have become educators, not necessarily in the way that he would have desired for us to stand before classrooms. Of course, at some point, we tried temporary teaching whilst waiting, in between waiting to go to university, and none of us really stayed there for long. Some of my brothers went in the rural areas, and some would just come over the weekend and say, no, I'm not going back. So as much as my father would have loved us to be a teacher, a headmaster, we are educators. I've written books. I have spoken before people. I have educated people in many ways. I've spoken on radio, television, and I've got feedback from listeners, and those people who have probably read the books, and there's been an impact. And one thing that I also, when I talk about significance, sometimes we think to leave a legacy, you need to be a celebrity, or to be this person is known. But if you impact your world where you are, you may be called to just impact 10 people who would then go and impact even more people, many other people. In the book, I talk about Susanna Wesley. Susanna Wesley is the mother to John Wesley and Charles Wesley. And if people would be asked, they've impacted many people. She was very instrumental in starting of United Methodist Church. But when people talk about United Methodist Church, probably not many people talk about Susanna Wesley. Maybe if you go in the deep rural areas in the country and ask maybe very loyal members of United Methodist Church who John Wesley or Charles Wesley's mom is, they probably don't know, but she was very instrumental. So to be significant and to leave a legacy, you don't necessarily have to touch a million people. You can touch that one person who carry along your legacy and impact many more other people. So you don't have to be known by the whole world. Just where you are, you do your best. You make sure you create a good legacy, because anyone can create a legacy. You can create a bad legacy. You can create a good legacy. So there's some people who are known, for their evil ways, and they've impacted even the next generations after them. So anyone can create a legacy, but if you're going to be significant, touch your world in whatever way, wherever you are planted, touch your world. And if you do it well, someone will carry the banner to the next generation.
Thank you very much, Tafadzwa, for that. That's so inspiring what you are saying there, and mentioning the specific things that your father has impacted. You spoke about education. You spoke about how your father and mother have been role models in terms of marriage. Obviously, in your book, you also talk about their 50th wedding anniversary, which is quite great. There is something specifically that I would want you to comment on, which you also say in your book, and that's to do with your prayerful life, your spiritual life. To what extent can you attribute your growth in Christianity, spiritually, to the impact that your father has had in your life? I would want you to comment on that before I ask you to comment on the other things.
Well, my father is a very prayerful person in his own way. He prays, and growing up, would go to church, would pray every day before sleeping, all things being equal. And he made church not boring. I've grown to be a church girl because I was raised to love church. And my father would defer to prayer. When you go to him and you share a challenge with him, the first thing he will tell you is, let's pray about it. And sometimes even when you think, okay, Father, here we don't need to pray, we need some action, he would still emphasize on prayer, that he has instilled that seed. Of course, the growth, I've grown also with associating with other believers, and as I grew up, but that seed, I believe it was instilled in me in childhood, and it never really died. I'm that girl who can even do church on her own. I can do the offering, the tithe, the worship, the preaching, and even the salvation on my own, because that's how much church has been instilled in me. So my father taught me to pray in his own way, and he made me value prayer, that if you come to me with a challenge, one way or another, we end up talking about prayer, because I've seen prayer working in my life and in other people's lives. So prayer really works. I believe in prayer because that seed was instilled from childhood, and I've seen it working in my life.
Thank you very much, Tafadzo, for that. For those of you who have just joined us, We are taking the time to launch Tafadzwa's fourth book, and her fourth book is called The Legacy of My Father. Tafadzwa is just taken us through now the areas that your father has impacted, your life. To me, the key message there is that, and it's a message that you have just highlighted, Tafadzwa, that you can be significant in your own world. There is a world that God has called us to be significant, and it all starts in the family. It starts when a father plays their role and is able to role model, certain things. So you've spoken about the value of education. You've spoken about the importance of marriage. You have spoken about prayer. And in your book, you talk about, your father was a powerful, lay preacher. Tafadzwa, would you want to comment on beyond the family itself? Just, take us through how your father has left a legacy, outside the family. You've had the opportunity to interview some of his students. What are they saying about the man? And what would be, your summary of the impact that your father, has had on the world beyond the family itself?
What I've had an opportunity to talk to a number of people, and one thing that I found actually interesting, my taxation lecturer at Africa University was my father's student, and apparently was, I think, one of his best students, because he was so proud of him. He was very intelligent, and my father was very passionate. One thing that would really make him happy is when his students got 2 units. Then there was 2 units in Zimbabwe in education system. You would have 2 units. Those were the distinctions then. His students spoke well of my father, and one of the some of the things that he speaks, he says, my father instilled in them students godly values, because even before the lesson, sometimes we would pray, and he encouraged them. My father is very passionate about peace, being peaceful. So he also said sometimes you would tell them stories just to encourage them not to be violent people, and he encouraged them to love school, education. He would encourage them, and some of the students also mentioned that he was very fatherly to them. One of his students also mentioned that they also used to go to the same church, United Methodist Church, and he would pay for their conference, a youth conference. He would pay, so they would make sure when there's a conference, they would go to Teacher Ziwa to tell him that they wanted to go to a conference, and he would pay. So those are some of the things that he instilled in some of the students. And also spoke to a fellow teacher with an opportunity to talk to him. And my father was passionate about developing schools. So one of the schools, he actually started it from scratch. Rather, he was made a headmaster at a school where there was like no infrastructure, and to work with the parents, build the school, encourage the people in the community to come to school, and so those are some of the school actually is now a fully fledged school where he started. So those are some of the stories I've heard where he has made an impact outside the family.
Thank you very much, Tafadzwa, for that. I will ask you one last question before we go to Coach Taffy. And after Coach Taffy has delivered his message, I want to bring you back, again, to talk particularly about the process that you went through, writing, this book. I know you as a hardworking somebody, but I want you to just encourage upcoming authors who can't publish that particular book. you have published 4 books, so far. So that's one thing that I would want you to just elaborate, on. But before I go to the last question, my last question would be for you to just talk to us about, you've had the opportunity to talk to your brother, Chengetai, and for him to share what his thoughts are about your father. I just want you to talk to us about the impact that your father has had, particularly on the boys, as well. Fathers are very close to their daughters, but I just want to hear that particular aspect. If you have just joined us, we're talking about the man. His name is Trabishon Reginald Namburiko Ziwa. He is Tafadzwa's father. And he is the man that Tafadzwa is writing about, a man who has made a lasting, impact, not only upon Tafadzwa, upon, the other boys as well, and upon myself. One day I'll get to tell my story as a son-in-law, and I can attest to everything that Tafadzwa, has said. I found him to be a very peaceful man with a deep love, for the Lord. I have found him to be very fatherly in every aspect, of the word. But what I would want to do now is just to read an endorsement of the book, by Coach, Taffy. I'll introduce Coach Taffy, just now. Coach Taffy, in his endorsement, says, "Fatherhood is an awesome responsibility that I carry with pride, because I have followed my father's footsteps, and I pray that my father, may follow, my sons may follow in mine." The significance of this book, which is authored by Tafadzwa, is not so much in the details of a father's life, but in the challenge, posed to fathers in general to recognize the role that they play in their children, choices. So that's what this book is all about. I would also want to read what Dr. Vimbai, Matiza Mtombeni said about this book. Dr. Vimbai says, "It's an inspirational book to honor a parent, more precisely a father. So the book takes the reader through the characteristics of a father who has created a legacy to be reckoned with." Then I would also want to, to talk about, what Dorothy, Sequoia says, about this book. Tafadzwa's new book, The Legacy of My Father, is an informative and inspiring testimony about a father's integrity, his resilience, his strong Christian faith, his dedication and determination to educate his family and the people of Zimbabwe. And for one to do this, sometimes it takes, great sacrifices. So I just wanted you to get an idea of what people have said about Mr. Trabishon Reginald Namburiko Ziwa. Before I go to Coach Taffy, Tafadzo, would you want to, to answer this question? What are your brothers, particularly Chenge, saying about the impact that Mr. Ziwa has had on their lives as boys?
They echo the same sentiments regarding education. Chenge appreciates that our father really sacrificed even for his education. When he went to university, it was a private university and it was quite expensive. And he talks about at some point when his father gave him a letter to take to the dean because he didn't have money. So he gave him a letter by faith to go and give the dean so that he could be admitted for that term. And because of his faith, he was actually allowed he was registered for that semester, and the father paid later. So he appreciates that his father really valued education and made sacrifices for him to be where he is. And it's the same story with the other brothers as well. My father really went all the way to encourage the boys to love school and to be independent, because when you're educated, at least you have a foundation. Whatever you do after that, it's up to you. But he made sure that at least the basic education was met.
Thank you very much, Tafadzwa, for that. What I would want to do now is to just give an opportunity to Coach Taffy to say a few words, to all of us. Coach Taffy has endorsed this book, and I'll just read the endorsement that he has given on this book. He says, I endorse this book because it is an invitation to each one of us and to our loved ones to dare and pursue being significant in our callings, to excel in it, and to leave a footprint for future generations to follow. I've answered the call and I will dare to be significant. So who is Coach Taffy? His full name is Mr. Tafadzwa Mukoi. He is an award-winning executive coach. He is an entrepreneur in his own right and a renowned speaker. He is the author of the book, Exit Your Excuses, Embrace Your Freedom, and Activate Your Potential. Later on, I will tell you how to get hold of, Coach Taffy's books and, how to get hold of him, as an individual. But over to you, Coach Taffy. What saith you?
Thank you so very much. Can you hear me, Temba?
We can hear you loud and clear.
Fantastic. I'm so excited to be a part of this conversation. And I want to celebrate you first, Temba, for allowing your wife to be this woman of impact, to be this woman who is indeed, as she has said in her own words, has become an educator. And so, sir, thank you for releasing her. 4 books later, as an author myself, I know what that means and the amount of work that is required. So I celebrate you, sir. Secondly, congratulations to my Sazita, Makorokoto Makuru. I'm so very excited about this wonderful piece that I'm shocked today that your dad didn't know. And I'm part of those who are conspiring behind his back to create a wonderful piece that celebrates him. The fact that we can celebrate people when they yet live is something that ought to be recognized and celebrated. And for that reason, Tafi Sazda, well done. I have gone through your book, and Temba has been kind to share my endorsement. And I think he was deliberate to let me speak to 10 points that I include in that endorsement. The first thing is, as a father myself, and as a man who helps other fathers, I speak to many different kinds of fathers. And having been raised by a single mom on account of my father passing on, this to me was really an emotional journey reading your book. The first thing for me was about how your dad spoke to you as children. And for me, speaking to children is the role of the father. And it excites me because there are many times I wish to this day, and my dad has been gone for 32 years. I wish there's certain conversations I could have with him. And so reading your book, today I challenge fathers, I challenge men, I challenge parents to speak to their children, because that is very important. Just now, Tafadzwa, you're speaking about going to church, that you can run your own church, call upon the tithe, call upon salvation all by yourself, preach by yourself. And that for me was my point number 2, is that it's the role of fathers to demonstrate faith. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. And when you have a father who demonstrates that and showcases it, who can build a school from the ground up, who can be assigned to places where he would rather not be, but be obedient to the call on his life and create structures and pillars of success is the role of a father. And so it gives me great delight. Tafazgo, when I was reading this book, something really hit me, and that's my point number 3, to say, fathers ought to have a good sense of humor. That's the last thing we ever think about as fathers, because many of us have been raised by a father who reads newspapers, who is a hoarse voice, who makes commands, who demands that things must be done. But a father who can bring about the humor of life is a father who teaches their children that we mustn't take life too seriously, whereas we must pursue our goals. We must challenge ourselves to achieve our dreams. But beyond that, to have a moment to celebrate life was something that, for me, I said, I'm going to do this to my children. But it takes a lot. Many know, and Themba, that the first love of any girl is their father. But for me, I was thinking about it a lot when I was writing the endorsement, and I realized that the issue about Mr. D was that you had the ability of creating memories in the things that he does. Sometimes we don't spend enough time creating memories. And this book teaches us that it is the role of a father, of a parent, to the greater extent, that we must create lasting memories. And you see, when you are able to do that, number 5 for me was you're making proclamations of goodwill, that in your memories, you're showcasing the goodwill of a father. I'm so excited. I wish I had more time to talk about this book and to share my insights, to draw people into understanding the value of this book. Is not just about the letters that are written in it, but it is a manual that speaks to number 6, and Themba, you talked about it, about peace. Is that it is the role of a father to strive for peace, to bring peace in the home, to bring peace in the vocation that they do, to bring peace in the greater world. But you know what? Every father still remains a father. And I'm excited that as I read that book, that the first you brought out the reality of a father's role of being a disciplinarian. Your dad was a disciplinarian. For us to speak about you, his children, and beyond that, that today you speak about your lecture as being to be products of your father, is a legacy that goes beyond imagination. And I'm going to pause at number 7 and talk about legacy, and to say that legacy is something that is passed on, that we can speak about and we can point to. And today we've got a book that we can launch and challenge fathers and say, hey, be a father. Don't be one who just brought a child to life, but be one who is involved. And so number 8 for me speaks to being encouraging of practicing of good values. I want to be that father. Tafazo, reading your book, it says, I want to be that dad. I want to be that father. I want to encourage my children by setting standards that are very high, by showing
Sorry, Coach Taffy. Sorry, Coach Taffy. I think something has happened to our technology. You have been muted. Would you want to unmute yourself? I don't know what has happened there.
My gosh, can you hear me now?
Now we can hear you.
Oh my word, and here I was on fire, excited about this book. Anyway, I was just highlighting that it is the role of a father, number 8. I'll go back to number 8, to showcase good values. And after that, I said that it's the role of a father to be influential in his assignment. I speak. In actual fact, Tafansko, I must celebrate you. You're persistent, my friend. You made sure that I would be here. I'm actually in the middle of a conference that I'm hosting, but I said I would still do this. And it's because of number 9, which is being influential in my assignment. I want to be that father who is influential, who doesn't take any excuse, that is pressing on and pressing forward. But above all of that, you know, Tafadzwa, thank you. Thank you for celebrating your father as an individual who achieved notable results, yes, but he remained an individual. And sometimes the pressure is upon many fathers that we want to be more than we think we should be. Yet all we need to be is who we are, because everybody else is taken. And so as I have this honor to speak at this book launch, I'm excited. I am challenged. I am really on the mountaintop. And yet I find myself wanting to pick another mountaintop that is called fatherhood. That says when my children are of age, they'll remember the father that I was. And so as I conclude this almost interrupted message of congratulations, is I want to challenge fathers out there, is to say your children need you. Your children will remember you. Your children will carry on your legacy for as long as your legacy is one that is driven by values, a legacy that is driven by principles and very high standards. Tafadzwa, congratulations. Temba, well done. And thank you for this honor that I can speak, even though I'm in my car and having to run back into my conference, but I'm so grateful for this opportunity. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Coach Tafi, we are indeed thankful for your presence. You know, I know you've had to come from your conference. Thank you very much for endorsing the book. And thank you very much for the inspirational, message that you have communicated, there. We are appreciative, sir. And I think the message is reaching out to all of us, particularly around, the importance of fatherhood. We appreciate, say, and that's that's well, appreciated. So that was Coach Tafi. Coach Tafi is an entrepreneur. He has written books. His books are available. I think he's gone now. I wanted to ask Coach Tafi where people can get hold, of your book. Would you want to just take our viewers, our readers, how they can get hold of your material?
Thank you thank you very much. My books, you can find them on Amazon. I'm also a fellow author. That's the easiest way. But you can also get them on if you inbox me on any one of the social media platforms. I am on Facebook, Tafadzwa Kenneth Mukoi or Coach Taf. I am on Instagram, on Twitter as well. I'm actually very easy to find. So I suppose all they need to do is just Google me in any format. I'll be able to respond. But I love WhatsApp, and I respond to WhatsApps in between many of my speaking engagements. And my number is 0772. That's 0772 902 108 902 108. Once again, thank you for this opportunity, Tafi. It's such a beautiful thing. I'm excited. Thank you so much, Temba.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Coach Tafi. We release you to go back to your conference.
Yes.
For those of us who have joined us today, we're talking about Tafadzwa's 4th book. And Tafadzwa's 4th book is called The Legacy of My Father. I see that there are people joining us via both Zoom and Facebook. Thank you so much for being part of Tafadzwa's book launch. What I will ask you to do is just to post your congratulatory messages, both on Zoom and also on Facebook, to congratulate Tafadzwa. If you've got any questions for Tafadzwa, please also post them, and I will communicate those questions to Tafadzwa accordingly. I think what I have gotten so far from what both Tafadzwa has said and what Coach Tafi, has said, is that fathers can play significant, roles, and they have a significant impact in the lives of their children. And today we are celebrating a man who has had significant impact on the life of a daughter, but also on the life of his sons, as well. Tafazo did not give me an opportunity to share my own testimonies in the book, and I think that was very sad. But I would have wanted to contribute. I hope you're going to have part 2 of the book, where you also give sons-in-laws an opportunity to say, 1 or 2 things. But if I had an opportunity to say something about this man, I got into a relationship with Tafadzwa, while his Tafadzwa was, in university. And I saw how his father was sacrificing to finance Tafadzwa's education through, a private university, for that matter. And the impression that I got was that this was a man who valued, education, who was willing to sacrifice, all for the success, of his daughter. The other thing that I can say about this man, once I became part of the family, I could feel the regard, for things spiritual in the family. I was welcomed into the family. Not only was I welcomed as a son, but I could feel that this was a godly family who were really grounded in the things of the Lord. And I will forever be grateful, being part of that family. Tafadzo, back to you. I just want to ask you 2 questions, before we conclude today's sessions. But in case you're asking the question, how can you get hold of Tafadzwa's book? Tafadzwa's book is available on Amazon. In fact, all your books are available on Amazon. So you can go directly to Amazon, www.amazon.com, /author/Tafadzwa, Mazibuko. The second way of getting hold of Tafadzwa's material is to go directly to a website. So she's got a website, www.tafadzwamazibukospeaks.co.za. You can even contact her directly on a WhatsApp line, South African number 065-823-3548. Let me repeat that again, 065-823-3548. The easiest way is to just send Tafadzwa an email, tafadzwa@tafadzwamazibukospeaks.co.za, and then Tafadzwa will show you how to get hold of your book. The book itself in rands costs 180, so it's not an expensive book at all. In Zimbabwe, the book costs $10 US, and it's also available in Zimbabwe, as well. So that's, that's how you can get hold of Tafadzwa's material. But what I would want to ask Tafadzwa now is, Tafadzwa, can you encourage some upcoming, authors? Just take us through the process that you have had to go writing this book. I know you're a mother, a very busy mother at that. I know you are a speaker. I know that you are a businesswoman. Just take us through how you were able to balance, through all those responsibilities. And what is it that has caused you to be, persistent, particularly in publishing, material? And also, how can you encourage, upcoming authors who would want to put their material, out there?
Thank you for the opportunity. I believe when you have a message to share, it's like fire in your bones. You want to share the message. However, with writing, unless if you are in a charity organization and you want to donate the book, It comes with its own challenges because before you write the book, you need to establish who your target audience is, who is the message to, and why should they read the book? There are millions of books out there. Why should someone leave this book to pick your book? So you need to know your strength and your competitive advantage. Who is your target, and what is your strength in your writing? And as I mentioned earlier, are you doing it because you want to distribute the books? If you want to distribute for free, it's a different scenario, because then maybe the way you manage the costs is also different. But if you're going to be selling the book, then you need to also consider the costs. Well, there are many costs involved in writing a book. So you find sometimes you start writing a book, when you're done, the manuscript is there, then you find you don't have money to publish the book. So in your mind, you need to consider the expenses. There are many expenses that are involved: the editing, the printing, the covers, and many other costs. So as you start writing your book, some of those say that you can start saving as you go along, and unless if you're going to have maybe some lump sum money, but mostly I find that to be a hindrance to many people. And with writing, you don't have to write overnight. What I normally do is whenever an idea comes, I sit down and write about it there and then, or I just make sure on that particular day I sit down to write, because sometimes the ideas just come and you write, and sometimes you can even go for some months without any other new idea coming. And you need to be diligent to consider the readers. What value are they going to get from your writing? And like in this book, the emphasis is on how to create your legacy. As much as my father's story is the story that's being told, but the idea was to encourage people that anyone can create a legacy, and you have to be intentional to create a legacy, and you have to be intentional for you to be able to finish strong. So what the other challenge I also find with writers is there's a totally different, or rather there's a gap. You can be the best writer in town. You can write the best book, but if you don't know how to get people to buy the book, then you remain a writer, because an author is a published person. So the marketing is a lot of work. It's a lot of work, and that's where most authors stop there, because you can have your book there, but how to get it to the world, it's a totally different, and it's a skill that you need to learn, that you need to keep on learning, so that you are up to date. But as long as you're clear with the audience, you know how to market the book. You write. You don't have to write overnight. You can take some people can take 5 years, but you can also have a timeline depending on how many publications that you are on your table. So you may need a timeline. Maybe tell yourself by December I should have published a book. So that gives you focus for you to keep on. But your why is important. Your why pushes you. You ask me what pushes you. Your why pushes you, and it's a lot of work. It needs a lot of discipline, because to come up with like 200 pages, it takes a lot of discipline. And as for me, I also depend a lot on the Holy Spirit to guide me and for ideas to write the book. And sometimes even after the book, I'm amazed at how the book has come up, because it starts as an idea, which you need to come to put into chapters, and a lot of work. So it's also a lot of work, because if you have to interview people, and not everyone will come to play. You may ask somebody, can I interview you? Then they say they're not available, because people have different reasons. Sometimes the reason is the people who just don't want to be in the public space. So it's not like they're not supportive of your work. They just don't want to be in the public space. So you should also be prepared when you're talking to people to contribute. Some will say no, not necessarily because they're not supporting the work, but for their reasons. So you need to be open-minded that for your project, you need people, and also you work with other people. So it's a lot of work. And you may say, okay, I'll put my book on Amazon, but you still need to do the marketing even on Amazon. So you need that to bridge that gap on the writing and the marketing.
Thank you very much, Taffy, for that. As a husband and also as a business partner, I just want to salute you for publishing material. You've been a pace setter in the family. You've been publishing a lot of content, and we have got, the utmost respect for you as a mother, but also as somebody who is driven by a vision. And I pray that your message may get out, to the world. I think you've got a message for the world. And my prayer is that that message may get out. I think today, through your book launch, you have, provided an example to daughters, to sons, to honor their fathers and their parents for that matter, while least the parents are still alive. And I think that to me is a key takeaway after this book launch. Sometimes we say quite a lot of good things about our parents after they are dead. But I think what you have done through your book is take the opportunity to honor your father, who has had a tremendous impact upon your life, while least he is still alive. And one thing that has surprised me is that your father did not know that you were publishing this material, and he's proud of you. I wish one day we could actually get him on the screens and also hear, his point of view. Tafazo, I'll ask you one last question before we conclude the broadcast, today. And I'll give you an opportunity to think about that one, that question. In your concluding part of the book, you've got a section titled Dare to be Significant. So I'll give you an opportunity to just share with the audience, what are some of the things that they can do to live lives of significance? I will give you an opportunity in bullet point form to just share with our viewers, what are the things that they need to do to be significant or to live significant lives. At this stage, I want to acknowledge everyone who has been part of this broadcast and who has taken the time to celebrate, Tafazo. I will not have the opportunity to mention all your names, but I see that there are people who have joined us via the Zoom platform. I see that there are people who have joined us via Facebook as well. But let me just sample a few names that I'm seeing here. I am seeing Mrs. Barbara Mariwa. Thank you so much, for being part of this broadcast and for being supportive. Really, really appreciate. I know I would have wanted to give you an opportunity to say a few words, but time is not on my side. But thank you so much for taking the time to be part of this broadcast. On Facebook, let me just sample some people. I see Chido Ndadzungira. Thank you so much for being part of this broadcast. I see Temba Supra. I see Clifford Mazibuko. I see Tendai Elliot Sigauke. Thank you so much for being part of the broadcast. And then I can see the boys as well. We have posted messages of congratulations to their mother. And you're setting an example, to the boys. but not only an example about persistence, but an example about how you can live a life of purpose and pursue your dream. I know your message is all about dreaming, but also realizing, your dreams. And that's the message that you have to share, with the world. Let me also remind you about where you can get this book. So this book that we are talking about today is available on Amazon. You can also contact Tafadzwa on her website, www.tafadzwamazibukospeaks.co.za. You can even send a WhatsApp message on the South African number 065 823 3548. 065 823 3548. That's where you can get hold of Tafadzwa, material. Tafadzwa is on a run, and you encourage me quite a lot, Tafadzwa. The way you have just created a path and charted a path for yourself, and the way that you have been persistent in getting your material out there, sharing your message with the world. You are indeed, an example, even, within our family. Tafadzwa, as we part with the audience and with our viewers, talk to us about what it is that we can do to be significant and to live significant lives.
We all have a story to tell, and all have our world. No world is less than the other. You may be called to just impact your children, if you have children. You may be a teacher, and you may be called to impact your students, and maybe a nurse. There are many people you've touched in the hospital. Some have lived, some may not have made it, but it doesn't mean that maybe you didn't make an impact. So everyone can create a legacy. You have to be intentional. Age is not a limitation. Wherever you have started, or however you have started, you can still finish strong. If you have made mistakes before, it's okay. As long as you're still alive, you can still correct and still finish strong. So, and we can all create a legacy. The idea is to find your area and be intentional to touch lives. You don't necessarily need money. Though money can maybe make you be more influential, but in your world, desire that I'll finish strong and I'll create a good legacy, because you can also create a big legacy which can be carried over. So yes.
Thank you very much, Tafadzwa. For everyone who has been part of this book launch, I'm taking the liberty, because Taffy is my business partner, is my wife, I'm taking the liberty to have Tafadzwa sign a copy for you. So if you are part of the book launch today and you desire to have this copy, you will have your own signed version, original signature from Tafadzwa. Once you have purchased the book, I will also sponsor your courier charges. So I'm also offering to sponsor your courier charges if you are part of the call, today. All you need to mention when you are ordering the book is that I was part of the book launch, and therefore I'm entitled to two things. I'm entitled, number one, to have, a signed version of the book with a specific message from the author, from Tafadzwa herself. You are also entitled to have your courier charges. So I've told you the price of the book is 180 rands. If you are in South Africa, if you are in Zimbabwe, it's US $10. So wherever you are, all you need to do is to part with those amounts, and you will have the courier charges, paid for you, for you to get, the book. So thank you so much for being part of this broadcast. Just as a parting shot, I have been inspired even as a husband, listening to Tafadzwa respond to the questions, I've been inspired in 3 ways. Number one, I've been inspired to be a father indeed. We are celebrating today a man who has impacted his children. So that's the first way in which I've been impacted. The second way in which I've been inspired today is, as a child, I've got my own parents. I think I need to take some time and honor my parents whilst they are still alive. And Tafadzwa has provided an example to all of us, today. But beyond that, I have also been impacted lastly to leave a legacy in my own world and live a life of significance. Tafadzwa mentioned it today, that we don't have to be celebrities. We don't have to be celebrated. There is a world that God has called us to touch. That world starts with our own family. It goes to our profession, and the people that we meet on a day-to-day basis, even in our line of work, in our careers. That's the world. If you are a teacher, your world could be your students that you are interacting with on a day-to-day, basis. So as we conclude this broadcast, Taffy, I am inspired to leave a legacy. And I think, and I can just tell our viewers this, because I watch you on a day-to-day basis. I think you are really on a mission to impact the world, and you inspire all of us, including the boys, who are also listening to this broadcast from where they are. I think you are on a mission to impact the world, and you have set an example, to all of us. May God complete what he has started, in your own life. And so the key message to me is not so much about your father. It's about how you have carried the impact that your father has had on your life and multiplied it in what you are doing. It could be in the various, opportunities that you get to speak, but also you have found your voice, in the books that you are writing, and your message is getting, out there. And so myself and the boys are really inspired, by what you are doing. And you've almost set it a goal that every year you are publishing something, something which is, really, really, really amazing. How you find the time in everything that you have to do as a mother, and, and all your commitments is still a mystery, to all of us. Beloveds, let me just thank you for being part of this broadcast. May God help you to leave a legacy in everything that you do. Don't forget to order your copy of Tafadzwa's book, The Legacy of My Father. Till we meet again, have a great festive season, and may the peace of the Lord be with you. May you prosper in everything that you are doing in your life. God bless.